and they decided that members of the original secretariat should have the opportunity to sit on the executive. You can imagine what fond memories I have of that. And of course, the tribute I pay to this great man, P.J. Patterson. He has enabled me to sit in the Jamaican cabinet over many years. He was instrumental in my becoming the first chairman of the PNP-YO. And of course, he was instrumental in me becoming, I think, the 5th chairman of the People's National Party. So wherever I go publicly, and especially on occasion like this, I pay tribute to him. He has had a whole lot to do with whatever achievements I can be credited within the People's National Party. However, I'm not here to introduce him. I'm here to bring greetings, and I know that it's clear that you're following what I'm saying. I'm not here to introduce him, but to bring greetings from the parent body, the People's National Party, and I do so most sincerely. I welcome you all in the name of our 75-year-old party, and this is an occasion to celebrate that milestone. In doing so, I'm mindful that it is none other than Nelson Mandela, whose birthday is being celebrated today, and I think it is referred to as Mandela's Day. You can decide whether it's a coincidence on the part of the PNP-YO. I don't know. We are proud as a party that we played an important role in dismantling the apartheid system in South Africa. In that regard, we remember now 2 of our national heroes. National hero Marcus Mosiah Garvey, our founder, the great Norman Washington Manley, and of course, our former President Michael Manley, and our esteemed guest speaker, Comrade P.J. Patterson. And I don't know how many of you were looking at the television today, but I saw some documentary which included our present leader with Winnie Mandela, and both of them made such a beautiful picture. As I indicated, this is but one of the functions celebrating our 75th anniversary, and the arms of the party will do their contribution, namely the women's movement, and I refer to an excellent conference they had last Sunday, and today it is a contribution of the youth arm, and no doubt in due course you'll be hearing from the NW. I should point out the following important milestones in our country's history. The end of Jamaica 50 celebrations and the beginning of the next 50 years of political independence. The 175th anniversary of full freedom. The 275th anniversary of the Accompang Maroon Treaty. And the 75th anniversary of the labor movement of Jamaica. Of course, we are not necessarily celebrating the 70th anniversary of another organization. All those anniversaries that I have referred to will be culminating in the gala celebrations of our independence during the month of August. However, I'm here once more, as I've said before, to bring greetings, and these, as I said, should be short, not eternal. I end by once more congratulating the PNP-YO, who falls under my portfolio as chairman. And I know that the conference will turn out to be what we are all expecting and anticipating, since we have no less a person than a great giant and stalwart of the People's National Party, Comrade P.J. Patterson, as our guest lecturer. Indeed, the theme is an interesting one: youth and politics, apathy, conscience, and chasm. Once more, I heartily and sincerely welcome each and every one of you. Have a good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor, it is with regret that I inform you that Professor Archibald MacDonald is not able to make it this evening. However, I would call on Comrade Carmelita Harrison, chairperson of the Arms and Affiliate Groups of the People's National Party Youth Organization, to introduce our most esteemed guest speaker. Comrade Harrison.
In 1967, an appraisal committee of the People's National Party was set up to assess the cause of the party's defeat at the general elections and to make recommendations on the best strategies to employ to ensure victory at future polls. The composition of the committee was critical because of the need to capture the diverse interests that had morphed into a pluralist organization, reflecting clearly defined objectives for national development. But in a remarkable turn of irony, the party which led the charge for self-government and nationhood was deprived of the opportunity to lead Jamaica into independence. It had suffered then its second straight defeat in 1967. The task of the committee was therefore daunting, and an even more challenging task was to select to lead the committee a person with sound political judgment and skills, with the energy, intelligence, and dedication everlasting that could move the party from the barren of political wilderness to the promised land of political power through which the hopes and expectations of the masses could be met. Prudence and foresight would have dictated that the chairman of necessity must be the embodiment of both elemental principles and objectives of the party, rooted in a philosophy of change and infused with a vision and conviction that inspires the power and energy to make that victory possible. In other words, that chairman had to be young, gifted, and black. P.J. Patterson was the ideal candidate. He was young, only 32, a supremely talented organizer with a brilliant mind and a heart for service, and he is black. Representative of the massive, of the ordinary Jamaican people on whose behalf the party sought political power. Very shortly, the man under whose leadership the PNP Youth Organization was born and under whose guidance the PNP-YU flourished will rise like the king among us and will deliver with a common touch an historical narrative on the early beginnings of the People's National Party's youth organization and the role it played in the shaping of the People's National Party and Jamaica's future. For more than 40 years, P.J. Patterson put himself at the service of the party and his country. We know much about that, but we know little about the deep moral and social values that have delineated the life of one of Jamaica's most accomplished political figures since independence. His successes were never to be seen as an end in themselves, nor were they achieved for the satisfaction of his ego. The attainment of preeminence was inured for the benefit of the Jamaican people. To further the aspirations of a nation by advancing its economic development and promoting social justice and equality. Historians will someday weave the tapestry of a Jamaica through an historical continuum that links the struggle from the rebellious cry for freedom of Sam Sharp through the self-sacrifice of the peasants for land ownership under Paul Bogle to the militant uprising of the workers for social and economic justice in the 1930s, through to that quiet revolution in the 1990s, which witnessed the broadening of land ownership, the economic empowerment of a black entrepreneurial class, the rising standard of living of the working class, and the dramatic decline in the crudency and coarseness of our democratic process. We can make no claim upon him as only a Jamaican because he is a son of the Caribbean, a regionalist, a most respected and revered statesman who, with honor among the Commonwealth of Nations. Whatever may be said about PJ by his critics, some of whom he has won their grudging respect, others the object of envy and jealousy, or whether you may be tempted to inquire of his failings. It is the words of Oliver Goldsmith which rang true in 1992. in 1997 and 2002 that we must touch his weaknesses with a delicate hand, for there are some faults so nearly allied to excellence that we can scarce weed out the fault without eradicating the virtue. Specially invited guests, comrades, the Most Honorable P.J. Patterson.
Comrade Chairman of the People's National Party, Chairman of the PNP-YO and officers, Mr. Floyd Green and members of the G2K delegation, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, comrades and friends. This lecture forms part of a series during the 75th anniversary of the People's National Party, intended to reflect upon our historical legacy and advance our discourse on a range of contemporary issues devoted to our social, economic, and cultural evolution as a country and as a people. I want sincerely to commend the PNP Youth Organization for hosting this lecture, and once again for being first off the mark. The occasion is itself of great significance as you celebrate your 45th anniversary, for it was here at the Excelsior High School auditorium that the PNP-YO emerged on the political stage. Yours is now a mature organization which has fostered the engagement of the PNP with a broad coalition of youth support that has yielded advantages to the mutual benefit of both the party and its affiliate over the preceding years. How fitting it is, as we have been reminded, that the event coincides with the 75th birthday of Nelson Mandela, a universal icon in the struggle for freedom, for justice, against the cruel indignity of apartheid. The two political institutions which played a seminal role in the shaping of the Jamaican society are currently celebrating milestone achievements. The Jamaica Labour Party deserves our warm and sincere congratulations on its 70th anniversary. For 7 decades, the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party have managed to keep our democracy alive. I have said before, and once again assert, that if we objectively assess the performance of both political parties over these years, there are successes for which we can take credit and failures which we should admit. Of course, my score sheet will reflect somewhat differently from that of a leader, past or present in the JLP, but so it is. I am particularly delighted at the presence of the president of G2K and members of that organization. And I say so because the youth must break new ground. it is true that people in the PNP and people in the JLP have very close social relations between them, but too rarely are they seen coming together to present a unified presence on occasions of national importance. While we will always have our differences as part of the cut and thrust of the political process, we must always strive to remain true to our history. I'm not going to follow someone else's contrived version of our past that was rendered a week or so ago that would make one party the savior and another the villain. That's not my style. That would only serve to falsify the chronicle and perpetuate the divisive nature of our political process. Let me begin, however, with adopting a phrase. Let me mash down one lie. It's not true for anyone to suggest that growth in Jamaica only began in 1962. There is massive evidence to the contrary. Scholarly research has shown that the growth of the 1960s was sustained by the strong economic foundations laid by the PNP administration of Norman Manley between 1955 and 1962. It could not have happened suddenly after 1962. A country's development is not just a series of events, but it is an endless process of activities. It takes away nothing from a truly honest political figure to recognize and acknowledge that the economic growth between 1955 and 1965 was the highest in any single decade in our country. As we inaugurate these annual lectures, I want the YO, and I hope in this the G2K will join them, to devote its energy to ensuring that the legacy of our foreparents is forever protected from any attempt to distort their contribution for the sake of political one-upmanship. If we allow the distortion of the people's history to go unchallenged, then the common cause which bound us in slavery, colonialism, and independence, and that must provide the meaning and purpose of our future development, would have been severely fractured. As you have been told, following the second defeat in 1967, Norman Manley insisted that there be a critical review of the party's organization and administrative structure to make it more efficient, responsive, and attractive. At the ripe old age of 32, I was entrusted with the responsibility to chair a reappraisal committee comprised of party stalwarts and known supporters with diverse areas of political experience and professional competence. Our instructions were to avoid any compromise on the core values and tenets of the party in an expedient route to political office. Cardinal principles had to be maintained while pursuing sound political strategies to secure state power. The two should not be seen as mutually exclusive. Several structural changes were proposed and subsequently approved by a special party conference in 1968, actually held here at Excelsior. The report recommended the creation of a party secretariat with a competent staff to support the General Secretary. These were a public relations officer, Patrick Cooper, a research officer, Kenneth Chinnon, a youth organizer, Leroy Cook, and a fundraising officer, one Robert Pickersgill. A new post of organizer was created to take charge of operations in the field. That was Courtney Fletcher. Until that time, the leader of the party was also chairman of the party. And it was only after the report it was accepted that the roles should be separated. And as a result, David Corr became the party's first chairman when Norman Manley retired as leader and Michael Manley succeeded him. There was also a recommendation to elect 4 vice presidents of equal status, and so discontinue the practice of electing a first, second, third, and fourth vice president. The 4 candidates receiving the most votes would be elected to fill the 4 positions. Another key recommendation was to decentralize the party by establishing 6 political regions and vesting in them clear areas of constitutional responsibility and oversight. That recommendation was eventually implemented in 1974. A year before the report of the reappraisal committee, Norman Manley had expressed the party's concerns about the involvement of young people in the development of Jamaica. I quote, "Youth power in the modern world is not a joke," he said. "It is a tremendous reality which has made new leaders and brought down old governments. Youth power is the repository of so much faith and hope and new energy and unexpected dedication that any wise observer will falter at the thought that any generation coming into being should not be making a search for its own mission and informed with a desire to achieve it." End of quote. Among our several recommendations was the need to attract and connect with the youth of the population, and to do so through the establishment of a youth organization as an arm of the party. Elected as a party officer for the first time in 1969, I understood the importance of that task and was assigned as the vice president to devote the time and energy in building a strong and vibrant youth movement within the People's National Party. Where do we begin in addressing this wide topic? I'm reminded of somebody who set out from Duckenfield to go to Ewerton, and on the way took the wrong turn at Morant Bay and ended up in the hills of Trinityville at the dead of night. And when he inquired for the direction how to get to Ewerton and Bogwalk, the people said, "You can't go from here." He says, "But wait, this is where I am." And they said, "All right, turn back, go back to Morant Bay, and make sure you take the right turn this time." So I'm going to begin by reminding us that the activism of young Jamaicans in the political process certainly preceded the formation of the People's National Party in 1938. When Solomon Alexander Cox launched the National Club in 1910, Jamaica's first nationalist organizations had two secretaries, 23-year-old Marcus Garvey and 21-year-old Wilfred Domingo. We know much about Marcus Garvey. You should be reminded that Domingo became a founding member of both the Jamaica Progressive League and the People's National Party. In 1934, 30-year-old Osmond Theodore Fairclough returned to Jamaica from Haiti, where he had held managerial positions in the National Bank. When he presented his credentials to the managers of two Canadian commercial banks operating in Jamaica, one offered him the job of a porter. Fairclough immediately took the decision to invest his time, his energy, and his limited resources in the formation of a political party that would radically change Jamaica's political and social fortunes. In 1937, O.T. Fairclough recruited 25-year-old Frank Hill to launch a weekly newspaper, The Public Opinion, which quickly became the organ of the national movement. Kenneth George Hill was 27